寒い
They will cower! Fire in the hole!
So if you've spent any amount of time looking at board game related content online, chances are you've heard or seen of Gloomhaven. Now, as you may have noticed, this game is an absolute unit. It's definitely the chungest big box of games when it comes to playing board games.
By just looking at the sheer girth of Gloomhaven, you can kind of tell it's not the easiest thing to jump into, as evidenced by the fact that you can quite literally jump into the box with ease. Like, just look at all this crap he's pulling out. Jesus, it's like one of those clown cars where dudes just keep on coming out, except with, instead of people, it's just a bunch of cardboard and plastic. Also, hi, what's up? Social distancing, that's a thing. Hey, did you know that we're living in the midst of a pandemic right now? Crazy, right?
But what's this? Daddy Isaac made Gloomhaven? Jaws of the Lion? It's like Gloomhaven, but just way more streamlined. Like, seriously, look how big the difference is between the insides of these two games.
Okay, let's get everyone here up to speed in case you have no idea what Gloomhaven is. So basically, it's a campaign game where you pick a character and constantly go on dungeon crawling adventures with them in order to level up, get cool new items, and progress the ongoing story.
At its core, scenarios have a goal to complete. A normal one being kill all enemies. You set up the scenario and monsters, then everyone plops their character's mini onto the board. Everyone has a hand of action cards specific to their character, and how a round works is that all players pick 2 of these cards to place face down in front of them. This is because on your turn you perform the top action of one card and the bottom of the other. Then everyone all flips their cards at the same time, at which point you also flip a card from each monster's attack deck. Every action card is going to have an initiative number on it. The smallest number goes first in the round, and everything takes turns in ascending order until you finish the highest number's turn. Then, bam, next round, repeat the process. So now that we've established what Gloomhaven is, let's get on to actually reviewing Jaws of the Lion, and let's start out what we think is really dope about the game. First and foremost, oh my god, Diet Gloomhaven is so much easier to get set up and going. It's got simpler, cleaner components, characters that are easy to jump into but still have a lot of depth, and a shorter campaign that not only has a fully fleshed out tutorial, but also has the perfect length, so you're probably actually gonna finish it, unlike the base game.
Let's talk about how much of a huge deal the simpler components are. Even upon initially opening the box, it's immediately apparent that it points you in the right direction with unboxing instructions that clearly tell you where and what everything is. It's great. And then there's actually a functioning insert where you can neatly store all the game's components. Oh, and did I mention they include all these plastic bags for all the loose pieces and these dividers for cards? None of this was in normal Gloomhaven.
The rulebooks also do a much better job of easing newcomers into the game with this handy dandy how to play guide. It slowly unlocks mechanics as you go through the tutorial, meaning that newcomers won't be flooded with things like battle goals, elements, and even leveling up until they really get a feel for the game. On top of that, there's an actual glossary organized in alphabetical order if you ever need to look anything up. Like, Gloomhaven had none of this. It just had this huge 50-page dummy thick rulebook that just overwhelms you with the anatomy of all the components before even telling you how to play the game or what combat is. And there's a game changer here. You see, the maps are now literally built right into the booklet. And because of that, scenarios have custom art now. But you know, let's actually show you why this is so cool. This new booklet was so positively received that a Kickstarter update for Frosthaven Daddy Isaac was like,
Frosthaven Kickstarter update number 46. Alright, so now let's talk about Jaws of the Lion. I normally wouldn't bring this up again since it's not part of this campaign. We will also begin development on play surface scenario books for both Frosthaven and Gloomhaven that can be purchased separately by those who prefer. Okay, you know what? He's making them, alright? He's making the goddamn scenario booklets for the other games, okay? And once they're out, I'm never going back to Tiles ever again! Take my money, you brilliant bastard!
And then to top it off, Diet Gloomhaven has these initiative trackers for every single character and monster, so you never lose track of whose turn it is during gameplay. This is super duper useful for when someone takes too long during their turn so you forget who's supposed to go next. Basically, the components of Jaws of the Lion have been carefully designed to make newcomer or veteran playthroughs as smooth as possible. So the first 5 missions are the tutorial, with each scenario introducing more and more rules until you're ready to take on the full game. It's pretty genius. Not only does this steady flow of information ease players into the game, but there's also these blue help boxes scattered across confusing things. Heck, every class even gets these action cards with blue boxes to use in the tutorial.
Like, look at this. What does this card mean? Oh, I can do 3 damage to a bad guy up to 3 spaces away from me? Cool, okay. This tutorial structure keeps everything extremely simple while explaining it all really well.
But what about the 4 different classes included in Jaws of the Lion? Well, we're happy to report that they're all very well made. Not only are they all super cool, but they are also all simple to get into. On top of that, they also have a lot of nuance and depth behind them like most normal Gloomhaven classes. This means that for newcomers, they're going to have an easy time getting into their gameplay, but they'll still have a lot to learn and build upon as they keep playing. For example, I'm playing the Red Guard, and he's got a lot of fairly straightforward abilities that are suited to a bruiser. You frequently do pretty basic turns like moving up to guys and hitting them, but your abilities frequently have slight benefits attached to them, like shielding yourself to take less damage, or pulling in enemies with your short-ranged attacks. However, there's a lot of nuance built into this otherwise simple premise. You'll probably end up noticing, hey, wait, I have a lot of abilities that affect adjacent enemies. Maybe I can combo that with my pools. Or how about how many of his cards play around with elements in some way, which is essentially a mechanic where some abilities create elements and then anyone else can just use those for extra benefits. This adds a whole nother layer of depth as you now have to carefully plan out how you sequence your turns.
On the flip side, I'm playing Hatchet, who's way more of a ranged character with a lot of basic abilities that just involve moving and attacking someone within a range of 3. However, his whole gimmick is that he has this card called The Favorite, which equips him with a special axe that he can attach to any of his ranged attacks to increase its damage. But when he does this, you move that special favorite axe to the enemy that was just attacked, and so they drop it when they die. Meaning that you gotta run over there and pick it back up before you can use it to buff another one of your ranged attacks. So basically, you're constantly asking yourself questions like, should I throw my super special favorite axe now or save it for later? Do I even attack that guy in the corner? It's gonna be super annoying to go over there and pick my axe back up.
And then on top of the nuance that each class provides, you also have to factor in teamwork on top of that. Using the Red Guard and Hatchet example, maybe when the Red Guard goes in to tank some damage and pull some enemies to him, this opens up an opportunity for Hatchet to go in and safely retrieve his favorite axe. A lot of these teamwork opportunities pop up all the time during gameplay, and the combos and opportunities get so much more crazier and fun when all 4 of the classes are involved. Like, I'm pretty sure it was intentional to have all the classes have some way to move around enemies and then also all benefit from some sort of positional gimmick. The Demolitionist actually really likes it when enemies are next to walls and obstacles because of explosion-related abilities. And the Void Warden can just straight up mind control enemies to move them around and then have them attack each other. On top of that, all the classes can reliably make elements, with the exception of Hatchet, that the other classes can typically use.
Also, this is totally a subjective point and all, but can I just say that all the Jaws of the Lion classes are cool as hell? Like, our dude playing Demolitionist put it best when he said that if any of these classes were included in Gloomhaven's starting roster, they'd be the best one, hands down. Like, Red Guard is basically just cooler, flashier brute. Demolitionist is way more fun scoundrel because he's just constantly blowing stuff up. Hatchet is a literal cowboy, how do you get cooler than that? And Void Warden does a support role in a way more badass way than the Tinkerer, and mind controls way harder than the Mind Thief.
Okay, yeah, so the characters, they're all great, but what about this campaign that we're going to be spending so much time and effort into? Well, in our opinions, we think it's pretty darn good. So we've already talked about how great the tutorial is, but it's built right into the story as well. You're actively playing through and progressing the scenario stories by going through the tutorials, which definitely helps to keep players invested while they're learning the game. And while we can't really talk about the story without spoiling anything, we think it's good. We're 14 scenarios deep, and we definitely think it starts out way stronger than Gloomhaven's campaign. Granted, it does kind of fall off a little in our opinions later on, because we're at a point where we're just kind of messing around. It's kind of like in a TV show, there's like a filler arc, and we're just waiting for, hey, when's the next cool thing gonna happen?
Yeah, the story is pretty cool. Definitely keeps you invested enough to want to figure out what's going on so you can go kill the bad guys. But what about the story's length? Well, Jaws of the Lion includes 25 scenarios, which that's pretty sizable. That should definitely take like 50 plus hours to complete. Not to mention all the time it's going to go into out-of-combat stuff like leveling up, buying new items, events, what have you. And also, speaking of all those things, there's a good variety of different enemies, items, and events as well. Obviously, it's nowhere near as insane as the amount of stuff that's in Gloomhaven, but it's definitely more than enough for keeping you going through 25 scenarios.
So now we're going to talk more in depth about how Jaws of the Lion compares to actual Gloomhaven. So if you're not interested in that, go ahead and skip to the cons. First of all, the items in Jaws of the Lion are way more balanced than the ones in Gloomhaven. This isn't really going to matter if you're a newcomer because you won't be able to properly assess the power level of everything at first glance, but we definitely appreciate having to think a little more about what items to buy instead of just immediately looking at the OG stamina potion and going like, when would I ever not buy this?
There's also a lot of gameplay mechanics that are entirely absent in Jaws of the Lion, like rolling modifiers and summons. The campaign is also much more simplified since there's no world events, there's no prosperity, there's no reputation, like basically all you're doing in between scenarios in Jaws of the Lion is just leveling up, shopping, and events. Everything that's kept in is still quintessential Gloomhaven at its core, and everything is cherry-picked to ensure that the new player experience isn't muddled with a whole bunch of excess mechanics.
Everything you need for your character is in one single envelope, so you can just grab it, open it up, and start playing. It's way less confusing to newcomers now that the attack modifier decks and reference cards are packaged with the rest of the character's stuff. By the way, we never mention attack modifiers anywhere in here yet, but basically, whenever anything in Gloomhaven makes an attack, they draw a card from their own attack modifier decks that modifies the final damage dealt.
I also want to add that the character boards are way cleaner looking than in Gloomhaven, which for some reason have this big round summary thing going on that in my opinion isn't necessary and kind of just looks super ugly because goddamn all I want to do is just look at my character's amazing artwork. Shout out to the artist of Gloomhaven. I like how Jaws of the Lion instead just puts a bit of round overview text on the reference cards instead and just lets the blown up artwork for its classes just all hang out.
Anyways, aside from some organizational changes and some trimming around the edges, everything in Jaws of the Lion basically works the same way as Gloomhaven. And on that note, there's also a section in the back of the rulebook that details what exactly you can bring over from Jaws into actual Gloomhaven. Hint, it's the characters and battle goals.
Last few tidbits we want to throw in here. First, we really appreciate how the monster attacks actually have names now. Super cool flavor, adds a lot more to the combat than you think it would. Also super impressive how there's still really cool locked content and spoilers in Jaws of the Lion considering that it's supposed to be, intro to Gloomhaven. Like, they didn't have to do this at all, and yet they still did, which makes your progression feel really good for these classes since you can't just go and unlock more classes like in normal Gloomhaven. We won't spoil what the hell is going on with these locked boxes and do not open signs plastered everywhere, but trust us when we say that, oh my god, these unlockables are super cool.
Alright, now for the cons. Stuff that we didn't think was so hot. And we didn't really find that many actually, so the stuff that we did find is pretty nitpicky. First up, unfortunately, there's some people online that are reporting some misprints on their monster standees, and there's a handful of typos that need to be fleshed out but are thankfully addressed by Isaac if you do some quick googling. Next, there's not enough plastic stands if you want to play with 4 players, and thankfully we own Gloomhaven so that's not a problem, but yeah, that can be pretty annoying. And yeah, that's pretty much all we can find if we're trying to be critically unbiased. I mean, there's like subjective stuff we can complain about, like the Void Warden might not be the best class to include for a newcomer tailored experience since they're definitely the weirdest class that's going to cause some ruling confusion. But then again, the tutorial cards are really helpful, and when playing through Jaws ourselves, we had a friend who was a newcomer who was playing Void Warden, and after the tutorial, he felt pretty okay, so maybe that's not so much of a problem. There's more cons that exist, but I feel like those pertain to Gloomhaven more as a whole, and seeing that this is just Jaws of the Lion, it doesn't really feel appropriate to drop it here, and we're going to save those for a bigger, more extensive Gloomhaven review.
Screw that, I'm going to mention a few right here, right now. Firstly, why the hell are monster standee numbers so goddamn small? This is super annoying for anyone who isn't sitting like literally right next to where the scenario is set up. Why is there an inverse difficulty curve, where at some point the game just gets easier later down the road, which is kind of a big slap to the face to new players, since not only are they learning the game, but the game is also legitimately harder at earlier levels than when you're like level 7 and you're just so decked out in busted items and abilities? Why are there so many goddamn scenarios where the objective is just kill everything? Why haven't the official rulebooks recommended Gloomhaven Helper yet for being the best companion app ever for tremendously speeding up combat? Like, seriously, it feels like Gloomhaven was designed with a companion app in mind, and the fact that so many different third-party apps exist out there to automate all your bookkeeping is really telling.
Okay, enough of that, let's just move on to scoring. So here at Shelfside, we do things a little bit differently as a reminder. First, we're going to give you the recommender score, which is how we try to critically evaluate the game given the previous pros and cons. Then, we're going to give you our personal scores, which is how we personally feel about the game.
So for our recommender score, we're going to give Gloomhaven Jaws of the Lion a 9 out of 10. This is an excellent game that's an easy recommendation to, well, a lot of different people out there, considering that this game shows up at Target and not just your friendly local game stores. Jaws of the Lion has done the unthinkable, which is making Gloomhaven accessible. Need I remind you, that's an insane task, considering just look at this game. Like, Jesus, playing through this game is almost as much commitment as taking care of a small child, which, oddly enough, it's got the perfect size and weight to be one.
Essentially, Jaws of the Lion has fixed Gloomhaven's problem of being so inaccessible, and has really opened up the floodgates for the masses to just run in and try out some Gloomhaven. Like, it's really hard not to recommend this game to anyone who even has a remote interest in Gloomhaven. The combat is still absolutely incredible, but just in a bite-sized package that almost anyone can digest. We've always said that Gloomhaven is probably the best dungeon crawler out there, but it's unfortunately buried beneath a whole bunch of logistical BS. Now, with Jaws of the Lion, Gloomhaven is an easy recommendation.
And for those of you here who are already Gloomhaven fans, why are you even here? You know you were going to buy this game, it's just more Gloomhaven, like who doesn't want to play more Gloomhaven? Plus, I got even better news for you. For those of you who've started Gloomhaven but have never finished, Jaws of the Lion is an experience that you're probably actually going to be able to fully play through. Not just because of its shorter runtime, but also because you're going to be able to easily grab your friends and plop them right into the game without it being overwhelming.
Basically, Jaws of the Lion hits all the right beats and is one of, if not the best, dungeon crawler experience you can get right now. The only reasons why we're not giving this a perfect 10 out of 10 is because 1, all of the production problems like typos and misprints, which are going to get ironed out anyways in future printings, and 2, because of cons that we still have for Gloomhaven, which Jaws of the Lion still essentially is. But otherwise, think of this as the highest 9 out of 10 we can give to a game because it's so close to being a 10 out of 10. But yeah, go buy this game. If Cephalofair Games keeps knocking it out of the park like this, I wouldn't be surprised to see the Gloomhaven IP hit the mainstream, especially considering the massive success of the Frosthaven Kickstarter campaign.
So for my personal score, I'm going to rate Jaws of the Lion a 10 out of 10. I think this is hands down the best tabletop dungeon crawler experience I've ever played. We ended up playing this game over Discord, where Ashton has a camera set up, streaming the board. We got a Google Docs that basically functions like Gloomhaven Helper to track our combat, and everyone who isn't Ashton has their hand of cards open as images on their screen. It's real janky, real messy, yet it's still ridiculously fun. Like, if we were playing in person, I'd be losing my mind over everything about this game. Like, I've yet to even see my Hatchet mini in person. Like, God, that feels so weird. Anyways, don't know how many times I'm going to keep saying this, but to me, Gloomhaven was always an incredible game that's just buried underneath a whole bunch of logistical bullshit. And then Jaws of the Lion comes in, plunger at the ready, and goes, we are cleaning this crap up. And remember, I'm not even the one setting the game up. I'm watching Ashton do it over Discord, and I'm just seething with rage as I see him just turn a page before putting some monsters down, because I'm like, all those hours I've spent just organizing Gloomhaven tiles and just setting it up, it was a waste. But yeah, when it comes to my personal enjoyment, I love Gloomhaven's gameplay. So the more I can get to, actually playing Gloomhaven, the better. And guess what? We've been playing a ton of Jaws of the Lion. Like, we're actually further along in it than we are in the Gloomhaven campaign, funny enough. Last bits of rapid fire stuff that I like. These locked boxes are absolutely bonkers. I wish I could talk about them, but I just can't because spoilers. I also really like the enemies thematically way more than everything I've seen in Gloomhaven so far. Like, Jesus Christ, the Jaws of the Lion bad guys are insane in the membrane. Whenever we see them, I really want to just go in and mess their day up. I want to put a stop to their machinations. I want to rip and I want to tear. Ah!
My personal score for Jaws of the Lion is going to be a 7 out of 10. There's so much good going on in this game, and the progression is really fun. Like, when you hit level 5, opening those boxes is like frickin' Christmas. As a Red Guard player, I'm super psyched about my level 6 card. Can't wait to try it out. And this is a game I could play with anyone with the amazing tutorial. Designers, take notes. So why don't I rate this higher? Well, this game, like the other Blank Haven games, have scenarios that tend to overstay their welcome. And this could definitely be because we always play with 4 players, but having one single room in a scenario take 1.5 hours? Oh my god. Now, as Daniel pointed out, I was the one who actually had the game on me during this pandemic for our video chat playthroughs. And so the managing of all the decks of monsters and items combined with typing in our Google Doc and then moving around everyone's miniatures, yeah, that really started to wear on me. Now, the combat is truly fantastic and does a good job of getting you excited for the next round. But time-wise, when choosing from the permutations in your hands and all the stats conditions and health of all the elite and non-elite monsters with tiny numbers, one scenario can take 3 to 4 hours. So my dungeon crawler comparisons are Descent and Hero Quest. Oh, don't fall apart. This box is so old. This is a relic. Oh my gosh. Yeah, well, these games definitely had, let's just say simpler combat. And because they were simpler, it allowed gameplay to have less downtime and better pacing for the story. Instead, in Gloomhaven, I'm hearing narration every hour and a half and then going back to manage my complex hand, and then I forget a little about the story. Plus, these games had dice, and dice chucking fun with a battle axe as some good old orcs is that good stuff. So yep, that's our thoughts and analysis of Gloomhaven, Jaws of the Lion. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Be sure to like and subscribe for more Shelfside content. As always, shout out to our awesome patrons. We have Manuel B, Max G, Clifford H, and Brian C. And wait, what? We have a Mad Lad of Cardboard! Yeah, we have a Mad Lad of Cardboard in our Patreon program. ZL, thank you Z. Wow, that is freaking awesome that you're doing that.